Good morning. Let me start with one point. Probably every one of you sometimes heard about the venture fund startups, everything what looks shiny, sexy and everything. What is important to say probably is that there is definitely worldwide much more money and capital than good ideas. It was valid before COVID, it was valid through the COVID, it's valid still these days. So what I will try to address in next few minutes is something what is probably slightly different than agenda and flow of these 2 days. But in very end you will understand why I'm talking about it. And I will try to show you some view of the investors, especially from US and UK, and maybe even the logic why they put the money into the startups who are in the biometrics area. So, this is how the market looks like these days. It started to speed up quite enormously in, I would say, past 5 to 8 years. It's not because the COVID, it just took another gear, but again, it was speeding up and mixing already since 2015-16 enormously, even here in the Europe. I'm not talking about the Silicon Valley, which is completely different universe. What you can see on the picture is just a few examples of the apps, logos of the companies, everything. But this is everything what falls down to our customers. Which means that every day our customers are attacked by so many companies, brands, applications, that it's very difficult for them to get oriented within that, what's important, interesting for them. So probably all of you experience something that you download some app to your phone, try what it is that, and you just delete it hour later, week later. Sometimes it's just app because on New Year's Eve you decide to lose some weight, so you download some app for bodybuilding and everything, which you probably use 3-4 weeks, and then you delete it anyway or never use it again. So it's just a typical example what everything is affecting us. And most of that companies who are popping up quite fastly and are visible are startups. And they are able to be so visible worldwide. It's because the online we live in, and it's because the investors' money they are putting in. So they are able to reach enormous, let's say, response from the marketing side because they've got enough money to start to compete even large corporations. And because they are very often faster than large corporations in preparing new products for the market and customers, they started in last 10 years really, really seriously to compete to the even large corporations. So this is why it changed for the customers. And for them, it means that they also started to accept new technologies, new companies, new startups, and put them on the equal level as previously just the large companies, in terms of the trust, in terms of the visibility, in terms of the acceptation of the new products. So this is what happens with the market. Market is shifting very fast, and startups and investors are just trying to catch on this wave. And it's important to understand that even the customers started to change their mindset, not just the US, even the Europe. And this is what brought all this huge wave of the success of the startups. And what you see here is just a few examples from the newspapers and headlines, how biometrics as a trend started to attack even the trend within the startups and the investors. So they see their huge opportunity. The venture funds are really not just the white one who are investing to every single technology they see, but there are already many, many venture funds who are really specifically investing into the technologies around the biometrics. And everything is about a scale. So, of course, industry, which is around the biometric technologies, is slightly more complicated than regular startups. Because if you talk to the big venture fund, let's say investment managers, owners, they always say that they put the money into the biometrics, but there is a difficult to understand which of the technologies is the one where to put the bet on. So for them, it's very difficult to understand which of the biometric technologies is the one or few of them which will really break through. Because it's quite new market, we will see even some numbers how the market is going to grow. And always they use if you ask them as a typical example, just the fingerprint. You know, it's most commonly used, it's known. And typically when you ask them why it's used, it's simple. There are newer technologies, you can imagine few of them, we will see even later on. So always they say it's not just the reliability, but it's always about the speed and use. So when I was preparing the presentation for today, I spoke with 3 investors from Silicon Valley last week and asked them why they put some money into this. And they always say that in terms of biometric, the fingerprint is so successful because the speed and ease of use. So anything from their filtering point of view on where to put the money on, they are saying every single technology which should be successful in biometry must keep these 2 critical points, speed and ease. So very simple view where to throw the money on from their point of view. And these were the people who put hundreds of millions of dollars into the biometric startups. So I was surprised actually how easy and simple was what they were saying around it. And here I just try to put few sentences and bullet points. What was their view? How to identify successful startup or startup with high potential in the biometric area. First was about the founders, because many people think that everything is the tech. If you've got a great product, if you have a startup who's got a perfect technology, everything else is, I would say, second or third priority, which is not true. For most successful investors, they always put on the same level founder and the product. Because if there is not founder who is really deeply understanding the area where he's got a product, he will never lead it right way in terms of the strategy. An investor always wants to see this is the good idea, and I also believe that these people or this team is able to deliver that to the market and the customers. So if they see even a perfect product and weak founder in there, they never put the money in. And if you would give them to choose to put 1% more, if it's 51 to 49, they always tell you rather put the money where the founder is stronger and he will somehow figure out the product. So founder is quite important in decision-making process from venture fund. Second is that product must be somehow disruptive, not necessarily inventing something what never been here. So almost perfect case is that you find a market which didn't change for past 10, 20 years, and you just found a market which is able to disrupt it in about 2-3 years, which means come there, conquer that, and reach significant market share very soon. And third condition is that founders and the team have really deep understanding of the market itself and the customer's requirements. Because very often, and we will see it later, issue of the founders is that they see their own product and slightly forgetting that these 2 things as a market and customers are still somewhere there, and these are the ones who should pay the money for that. So, if we take a look on the numbers just from last year, here you can see that there were, in terms of biometric startups, just in Silicon Valley in 2022, invested into the 156 startups, just with clear focus on the biometrics. Interesting is that often I heard a question that sometimes it's non-profit organization or something what is paid by government, some foundation or something, which is completely wrong, because if you take a look on that, there are just 3 in this year who were non-profit organizations out of 156, which means 153 are serious business where just venture funds are staying and saying, show me the money. So it's serious business, it's about the billions of dollars, as we will see. Because here you can also see the money which were spent into the startups. Just the examples, it's not complete, but you can see that it comes from few $100,000 investment up to the $150 million. So the spread of the money and capital into the biometric startups is quite huge, and it depends firstly on size of the fund who is spending the money into such startup, and secondly on how brave the idea is and what are they going to disrupt if they will break through. So we can see that the options are quite huge. Investors are clearly there because we are talking about the billions of dollars invested into such kind of startups. And another question which I gave them was, just tell me what from your perspective as a venture funds, what are the 3 trends you would think that it's worth to follow for the coming 2-3 years, except the current ones which you know. And they just show me these 3. They somehow agree on that. You probably know all of them. But this is something where they are right now thinking and considering if they've got the money and put them somewhere, not this year, maybe 23, 24, that these could be the areas where they just closely looking for if there is some breakthrough technology which is connected, that it's applicable to the reality. Because very often they are afraid in biometrics that technology is interesting, but it's gonna be very difficult to use it in reality. So they are just putting the weights on that. But these were the 3 trends which they somehow said, for the future, this could be interesting ways where to put the money and invest. And same time, they said somehow how the market is big this year or last year actually. Interesting is that their guess is that about in Americas, because they just their numbers, not European, that 75 on the Americans somehow use biometric technology. They are just sometimes not aware of that. It's the same as a few years ago. There were cloud, and everyone was speaking about the cloud technology, and everybody was saying, yeah, it's a buzzword, it's never gonna be such an interesting technology, how it's presented and everything. And it was even said by the people who were already using the cloud service, as simply just the email, Gmail, Yahoo Mail, something like that. And they were saying cloud will never break through. They were just not aware that they are already in cloud. And this is something similar what is happening now around some biometric technologies use in US, because people are saying, yeah, it's a big brother, it's maybe never gonna break through, but they are already in. They are just not aware of that, because just unlocking your iPhone through the face identification means it's a biometric. And same people are saying, it's impossible that so many people would use the biometric. So it's just really about the point of view. And this is exactly why some venture funds, especially US and UK, are so successful, because they do not have this, let's say, shades over their eyes, and they just take it how to bring it to the really masses as a service. And therefore, they are expecting this third line, which is market growth from 16 billion to 55 billion in about 5 years. So that's the reason why they grew up in past 3-4 years as a specific venture fund focused purely on the biometrics, because they see this potential on the market. And here just I gave a few examples of the successful startups from this year, actually. What is interesting, you can see that they are geographically quite spread around the globe. It's not about the Silicon Valley, however everyone thinks, yeah, it's always Silicon Valley. It's not true. So it's really anywhere. So it's more visible that it's about idea. You can see it even on the Innovatrics example, because it's a company which is from Bratislava but present worldwide. So it's really not about that you must be from Silicon Valley to succeed in biometrics. And it's interesting because it's not always like this. For example, if you are successful fintech, 80% of them are coming from San Francisco or New York, some of them UK, but it's much more difficult to reach global market than, for example, in biometry, which is kind of interesting trend to me. And then, of course, we've seen just 5 superstars in biometrics as a startups. But now there are plenty of other startups who are playing in this area, and always question is what's going on with other hundreds of startups who are trying to break through in this area. And this is what's going to happen with them, typically. Because in each single technology, there is typically not more than 5 startups who are able to grow into the global successful company. And other ones will, of course, die. Usually they are on starting line, and if they are not growing fast, if they are not scaling right way, they usually die. Interesting is that they do not die because the wrong product. We are always talking about the companies who's got a great product in the beginning or great potential product. So I will just show you a few examples what's going on with them. This first topic is, I call it pretending the game, which means you raise first money, few first millions dollars, and startup starts to play the game. We are cool, we are a startup, and slightly forget that they need to make this run and to be quite fast to reach top 5 to succeed. So usually they stop to disrupt anything on the market. They just play with their product and they think themselves it's cool. And second is that they are not talking about the customer at all, because they do not have this mindset, what is the value I bring to the customer, because I need to give him the reason to pay me for this service. Because the times, which were years ago, that successful startup, they've got a quite big customer base, but none of these customers are paying, and they hope that later on they will figure out how to get the money out of the customer. It's gone. 90% of all venture investments in Silicon Valley in past 3 years went into the B2B startups, which means clearly money path. There is no way to think we've got a perfect customer, we've got millions of customers, but let's hope sometimes we will figure out where we will make the money on them. It's gone. It's gone. So, second reason is what we call kidnapped by technology, which is quite often case in technological startups, which means they are in love with their product. They think they are genius, they've got a so great product that every customer must buy it, and even they think they don't need Salesforce for that, because why do I need Salesforce if I have such a great product which everyone must need? So this is really quite often case, quite often a reason for death of the startups. And this is something where all the professional venture funds are quite closely watching the key team, founders, CTO, and all these guys, to be sure or make sure that they always get customer in consideration when they work with a product, because this is a really, really big problem for technological startups. And it happens also to large corporations. If you remember Google Glass, their idea was they threw hundreds of millions, maybe $1 billion, for creating Google Glass as something cool, with expectation that every one of us will be every day looking like this. And they somehow forgot to ask the people if they are willing to do so. If to have such a small camera and then display somewhere here in the corner is such a big attraction for you that you are able to look like this and you would feel it cool. And after, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it was shut down, closed, $1 billion write-off. So I'm just saying so that it's not just the trouble of the startups, as it could look like, it's even trouble of the large corporations. So innovation in large corporation can be sometimes also the hallucination. So it's just very close to each other. And innovation in large corporations sometimes hurts. And that's the reason why I'm also sometimes investing into the startups to help themselves in terms of the R&D. Because if you take a look on the Apple, and I've got everything from Apple, so I can say I'm their fan, they are not innovative company at all for many years, or just very slightly. Their biggest innovation in past 7 years were AirPods. It's not a phone, it's not a computer, it's about the AirPods. And AirPods are generating the revenue and margin on, let's say, annual base bigger than Netflix, for example. So it's cool, and it was really innovation. But the rest of the core product, where people think it's an innovation company, it's not that much innovative. And that's, of course, space for the startups and their opportunities. And last point is overcomplication. This is the sentence which I heard a few times from startups when they were pitching to me and asking for the investment. So they've got a tendency to say, this is about us, this is who we are. And you read it and say, I don't have a clue what you are talking about. There is nothing about customer, there is nothing about value, there is no reason why I should buy that or try at least to get some additional information from you. So it's pure bullshit, but you can see it very often. So, if we should take some learnings, it's about the simplicity, even in complicated technological startups. And if I just give you a very, very simple example, you can see TV remote controller from Samsung TV and from Apple TV. Understand that there are some differences, but still, you are probably using very same functionalities which you use on this one, on here. So if you just take a look, if you come to your home and some to your friends, take a look on this remote controller, which they've got somewhere on the table, which buttons are dirty or a little bit messy from the chips or something. It will be numbers, and it will be volumes, maybe channel, and power. That's it. another 50 or 60% of the buttons, they will be never touched because customers doesn't have a clue what it is about. It's just developed because it looks cool, it looks high-tech. We've got a quite cool TV because it has such a great controller. But anyway, each of us thinks that the Apple TV is cool, and it's enough to have such a remote controller. So just example that for same thing, simplicity can just help. And here are just some 3 lines saying what are the critical things to watch around the startups, where they should succeed. So I'm not going to read it, you can see it yourself. But it is something where always successful and professional investors are taking a look on every single startups if they've got the answers for these points. And also, another important point, great investors and most successful is Sequoia, Andreessen, and other ones. They are not looking for a revolution and inventing something what never been here. They are looking for disruption. This is much safer bet in terms of money for them than believing that somebody came with technology which never been here. It's so dangerous, so many pitfalls, that the risk is quite high. And even these well-known products started with just disrupting something what's been here. SMS messages been here, so WhatsApp wasn't new. Many people thought that Apple is the one who brought MP3. It was already on the market with another 20 suppliers when they came. They just made it great way as they do. Google came with one window, while Yahoo, AltaVista, everyone thought that their front page is media house, that they need to put every single information on front page to make it easy for customer, which was exactly opposite because customers felt it's too complicated. So it's just the examples. And another golden rule in the startups is start to sell the product when it's 70% ready. Just try it on the real customers. Say that it's a pilot. It's nothing wrong on that. But to finish it to 100% ready product usually consume about 50 to 70% of the total budget for development. So if you finish it for 100%, go to the customer, you will anyway rework it. It's never gonna be first version. Everyone thinks that Uber is cool, simple, everything, but version we see now is version number 6 before it gets through. So just imagine the money for reworking everything. So 70% is perfect timing when to start with, and it's connected to another really, I would say, death of valley or the startups. And it is, you've got a customers, you've got a probably product, you succeeded, and now you just need to scale it up. And this is the momentum when 70% of the startups with a good team and good product dies. It is when they start to grow because they are not able to manage properly its growth. So it's a most dangerous part in the lifetime of the startups is scale up. It's not the beginning. This is just the mentality of the startups, why they succeed, because they are not afraid to make the mistake. So bigger you are, then more afraid you are of making the mistakes. And this is sentence which I had a chance to get a lunch with this guy who was really chief of everything what was developing new in NASA. For example, mission to Mars with rover. And he said that this is simply his mentality because they were planning mission to Mars for 9 years to put there the rover. And on 9 years, they made a mistake about 3 months. So 3 months mistake on a 9 years project, which many companies are doing on yearly basis. They miss their plan with developing the technology by 3 months. And they needed to count, when they started the project, with more than 70 technologies which needed to be used to get to Mars without having them available the day they started the project. So they just hoped and prayed that somebody will come with such technology because they thought it's so logical that somebody must invent it or come with it. So it's just about the way how to some really breakthrough people who really reach some great projects and products were thinking about it, and it's close to the mentality of these most successful startups as well. And I said that in the end, you will understand the logic of what I'm talking about here. And it's about the Biometric Ventures, because it is a venture fund owned by Innovatrics, And just the purpose when it started, and we were happy and lucky that we could be part of that, we said together with Innovatrics team, there must be some potential in this area, for sure. And what is specific is that it's not just about funding and looking for interesting startups around the world. It's also about that there are, for sure, some ideas inside a company. But because company needs to keep the focus on their core products, they are sometimes somewhere in the parking lot. And we just took them and trying to create together from them the spin-offs and, let's say, let them behave as a sort of the internal startups, develop them, and give them the chance to play the role on whole this world map of the startups. So Biometric Ventures is something what should be as an enhancement of the Innovatrics R&D and Innovatrics reach to the biometrics world through the logic which I was just explaining to you through all this presentation. So I hope it is something what you will see more often, and you will hear about some quite cool products from that in the near future. Yes, so we are in the end of my presentation, so thank you very much for your time and listening, and I hope something of that just ring your ears. Thank you very much.
Vít, thank you so much. That was very inspirational. I've heard somewhere that the only innovations that actually work are either the ones that make something very complicated, very simple, or that make something very expensive, accessible. And it sounds like exactly what you were talking about today, so it sounds like that is probably where we should be going. But before I let you go, tell me a little bit about the capacity of the end customer versus the kind of to absorb new tech, versus the speed with which new tech is being kind of pushed out on the market, right? So today, we were talking about some really high-tech stuff yesterday. Are the people ready for it?
It's a difficult question.
I only give
especially in
questions.
biometrics, because it's a more complicated technology a little bit. It's about the security, it's about the trust, it's about the instant trust, in fact, in terms of the security. So, of course, acceptance of the products from the biometrics gets time. And even average time for lending to the market in biometric startups, it gets between 3 to 4 years in US to really succeed and say we are scaling up. Simply because matter of trust and belief. So you need just to pilot it on few small projects, show it to the investors, and they decide if they put money on it or not. So I believe strongly that the customer's belief is there, but it must be really well and simple way explained where is exactly the value for them as a customer. What does that brings to them? It's not just about the money. Sometimes it's about more easy access, higher security or something. Because always in this area, there will be feeling of danger that somebody is watching me instantly. And we need just to turn around and explain that it brings them more than it takes from them. And this is, I think, the momentum which needs to be developed with the biometrics. But good message is that you are not alone here on that here in Bratislava, because it's going on in US already big way.
I'll stay with the issue of the value to the customer, right? There's this profound sentence from, I heard it's Ford, that everybody says, if I would ask my customers what they want, they would tell me they want a faster horse. So how do you know what the customers want when the customers don't know it themselves? How do you look for the problems? I know it's $1 million question, but...
Yeah, I think it was only Steve Jobs who said that it doesn't make sense to ask customers because they don't know what they want. But I think that it's just unique. I think that simple thing is just to come to the customers, have a talks with them, understand their business, and if you do so, they somehow open up and they tell you the things they are struggling with and fighting with, and you just need to be smart enough to address it with your product. So it's really about spending time with the customer in the beginning and asking the questions before you really have deep understanding of their business. So you need to walk in their shoes for a while to bring your products alive and simple. Otherwise, you will never do it.
Sounds like design process solves a lot of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, not in old-fashioned way, in all the design models. I think it's much more simple, and that's why startups succeed, because they are quite fast in that.
You talked that one of the elements that make startups successful is great founders.
Yeah.
That's nice, but what does it mean to be a great founder? And how does a perception of who is a great founder changes between, for example, America and, for example, in Europe, right?
Yeah, that's important. Great founder needs to have some consistency, knowledge of the market they are addressing, some experience, and he must be expert on some area.
Or she.
Yeah. So it's not a Superman who understands everything, and if he thinks so, it's a dangerous, so it's better to get away from him. But difference is that if you take a look on the venture funds in Europe, they usually look, and especially here in CE region, it's much more visible, that venture funds has the tendency to say, this is the great founder, nice guy, great idea, probably his first attempt, perfect, we will help him, which is dangerous as well. In US, much better view for them is, he already knows somehow the business, he had already some startup, not necessarily from same area, and even though the startup bankrupted, it's a still better founder for them than first-time founder. Because they said he probably bankrupted because he went through all the mistakes you could imagine, and he will just not repeat it if he was dumb. So for us, it's much safer bet. If you do it here, Prague, Bratislava, and guy is coming saying, I had already one startup and actually bankrupted, or here's idea number 2, most of the people say, it's some lunatic, he already bankrupted once, why should I put the money in him? So it's a completely different view than in the US from the investors. So for them, somebody who bankrupted is maybe best founder they can have for his another project.
So go and fail fast, people. All right, let's go to Slido. You mentioned a big spread in investments. How do VCs actually estimate the value of the biometric startup?
It's a perfect question. I ask the same. And it has very, very good measurement, and it's something like this. Because many times they invest into the new biometric technology. They don't have a clue, especially in the seed phase, in the beginning, how it's going to break through. So they say, we see market potential, they've got some numbers. They probably understand how to somehow divide it by number of the startups and companies who can be successful in this, and create somehow first valuation. So, but in the very beginning, it's a best guess. And that's also the reason why the investors are putting the money as a portfolio, and specifically if they are, for example, biometric fund, they say, okay, we need to have at least 15 to 20 investments because just 3 of them are going to survive. It's going to make multiple by 20, and all the things is going to pay off. But still, proper venture fund, classical one, is sort of the casino investment, and it's important to say. There is just the difference. If you are good or bad venture fund is putting that, saying, yeah, it looks nice, founder is good, product looks nice, let's put the bet. If you are better, you've got your analytical guys, you take the market trends, you take the details of the founders, people, you make, let's say, due diligence of the technology, etc. And it means if you are not with analytical guys, you are putting in casino, in the roulette bet on the number. If you are better and you've got all these analytics, you put it on the color, black and red. But still, it's a casino investment in very initial phase.
I know we're out of time, but I love the second question that's on Slido, so I want to go there. And you already started talking about this a little bit, but it says you did not have a product in your top 3 points that makes a startup successful. Isn't this how we end up with examples like Theranos,
Theranos
which is just
great.
Such a speaker's point right now?
Theranos is great.
Well, great.
I was putting there the points just to show you the optics of the venture fund and investors, how they take a look on the first evaluation of the startup. And this is where they need to fall in love. And if the love is there into the product and startup, then comes the process of due diligence, of the personal due diligence of the key people, how to fix them for the future, not to get, let's say, spread apart. So for sure, there is a check of the product, but anyway, if it's a seed phase, the technology is still halfway to the end. So it's always saying, okay, could be this way, we understand it, let's see, and they just ensure the investment the way that they put the investment into few parts. So they just say, okay, if you will reach in technology this stage, we will give you another bunch of the money. So typically it's spread to 3 to 4 payments to cover somehow the danger, but you are never sure.
I think we can talk about this for another week. It was so much fun talking to you. Thank you very much, Vít.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.